Hello and welcome. I like to think I have a pretty good grasp of the Chinese car market, but with so much going on, there are certain cars that seem to just get by me. Such is the case with this, the AION LX. I really hadn't heard very much about this car until we were offered this one for a test drive. Today, we're going to find out why that might be. AION is a sub-brand of Guangzhou Automotive, aka GAC or GAC. Prices on the LX range from $35,000 to $54,000, which puts it in direct competition with a Tesla Model Y here in China. Before we talk about the front-end styling of the LX, I just want to point something out about the general shape. When I see this car, I don't think SUV or even CUV, I think lifted wagon. This thing is as wagon-esque as something can be without just becoming a wagon. Believe me when I say that is high praise coming from me. Let's get back on track by talking about the front-end styling on the LX. This is actually the second car we have driven that was from a GAC sub-brand. The other one was the Trumpchi GA8. And these two cars could not be any more different. The GA8 was a conservatively styled full-size sedan, whereas the LX is, as you can see, a bit more avant-garde. The design revolves around the bold lighting here on the front, which I think gets better looking the closer you get to it. Here in the center, it's dominated by the GAC logo with blue highlights, because remember, blue means green here in the Chinese market. The look is completed by this air intake below and this very nice matte silver element at the bottom. I've already touched on the wagon-esque proportions of the LX, but there are a couple of other small details on the side that I want to talk about. First of all, there is the carbon fiber applications. First, here on the rear view mirror cap, and also here on the C-pillar. Now, based on the seams that I can see in them, I'm gonna guess they're not real carbon fiber, but I do appreciate that they went with a more natural, raw look rather than a glossy finish. The other detail I want to talk about is these wheels. Well, specifically the wheel covers. Aerodynamic wheel covers are a common sight on electric cars, but most of them don't end up looking like weird robot flowers like these. I think they look very cool, though I'm not entirely sure about the aerodynamic benefits. The rear design of the LX is dominated by a large, continuous taillight design that conjures visions of Star Trek. This is topped by the steeply raked rear glass and spoiler, while the bottom holds two plastic elements that look to be mimicking exhaust outlets. Kind of an odd choice on an electric vehicle. Opening up the rear hatch, we find decent depth, but a high loading floor. Another small complaint is that there is no way to fold the seats down from behind. You have to come around to either side and pull the handles. The interior of the LX is basically on par with a Buick in terms of material quality and fit and finish. It's essentially entry-level luxury. There are soft-touch materials like here on the dash and center console, as well as Alcantara here on the door cards. One thing I do appreciate is the color palette, specifically this camel-colored leather. It's more interesting than the all-black interior you often see on cars, but also more practical than something like the all-white interior you can select for a Tesla Model Y. The center console has a peninsula design that doesn't actually connect to the dashboard. This is the first time I've seen a design quite like this, and while I can't see how it's more useful, I do think it looks good. Shifting is controlled by a dial with a simple RND, while park is activated using the small button below. I don't like dials to begin with, and putting the park button here feels like a rather inelegant solution. Pretty much everything, apart from the air conditioning, is controlled via this 12.3-inch center touchscreen. Of course, there's also another 12.3-inch screen here that acts as your instrument cluster. Getting back to the center screen, it's decent, but there are certain functions that could be easier to use. For example, I had to mess with it for quite a while before I figured out how to change the driving mode and the regenerative braking settings. I also noticed that when getting in and out of the car, I would have to reconnect my Bluetooth almost every time. The rear seats of the LX offer plenty of legroom, though the passenger side is certainly the seat of choice. Whoever sits there gets to enjoy extendable calf supports and can adjust the incline and placement of the front passenger seat to give themselves even more room. Thing is, the LX isn't really big enough to take advantage of this, so you still end up rubbing your shoes on the back of the seat. The LX comes with 3 motor options and 2 lithium-ion battery options. The entry-level model comes equipped with a front-mounted motor producing 135 kilowatts and 350 newton-meters of torque. This can only be had with the 73.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack with an NEDC range of 520 kilometers. Should you want more range, you can choose the 93 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which will also give you a slight boost in power to 150 kilowatts. This second combination will net you a claimed 650 kilometers of range, and it is the one we are driving in this video. Finally, you can choose the performance version, which has the 93 kilowatt-hour battery pack, but adds another motor to the rear, bringing power up to 300 kilowatts and 700 newton-meters of torque. Claimed range for the dual motor version is 600 kilometers. While part of me wishes that we had a dual motor model for this test, I also recognize that a majority of buyers will probably end up settling for a car with this spec. That means the 150 kilowatt front motor with a 93 kilowatt hour battery. It's got the longest range, with a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time of about 8 seconds, a little less than 8 seconds. It's also more than adequate for daily transport. Now, instant torque from the electric motor also means that it never feels particularly slow when taking off from a stoplight or merging into traffic. This car comes with what AION describes as an L3 semi-autonomous driving system. In practice, however, it falls well short of that claim. The adaptive cruise control function often waits till the last second to apply the brakes, and it's very unnerving. The lane keep assist also tends to ping-pong between the lines like a drunk driver. I frequently found myself taking over for the system because it was behaving erratically. Many of these same semi-autonomous features are available on the Aura Good Cat that we recently drove, but at nearly half the price. Unless you put the LX into one-pedal driving mode, it drives much like an internal combustion vehicle, including creeping forward when you take your foot off the brake at stoplights, and having a power on and off button, which I find very odd. There is an Eco Plus mode, which maximizes range by turning off basically all of the accessories. It might as well be called range panic mode. The steering sensation is pretty lacking, pretty numb. It's also on the lighter side, even in the sport mode. The chassis is taut and composed, but it lets in a little bit more noise, vibration, and harshness than I would like when going over bumps. Now, when it comes to range, this particular car delivered around 400 kilometers in mixed highway and city driving. That's plenty for daily use, but it's well short of the 650 kilometer claimed range, even considering the fact that it's NEDC. Ultimately, I think that the LX is a car that is decent at many things, but not really great at anything. In the ultra-competitive Chinese EV market, that's simply not good enough. It has a lot of features, but it lacks the level of refinement that I would expect from a car at this price point. Ultimately, I think that's why it passed me by without me noticing it. All right, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. It really means a lot, and it really helps us to keep bringing you content from the Chinese car market.